very much. And I just almost wanted to go back to the beginning with the Leadership Lab. So one of the drivers for me, or the purpose for me, is I want to help particularly build better British business. And one of the elements to that is the capability of people in business to lead business change. Because I really see it as a skill. The ability to lead change is a skill that often we're not good at. In business today, we know that change is expensive, it's difficult, it's risky, it's unlikely to deliver the results that we want. And by coming, so almost full circle now, it's a sort of psychological safety. It's one of the, I would say it's the key element, but it's an important element, an underlying element that will dictate, to a greater or lesser degree, the likelihood of any change or project being successful. We know that. And so I think really worth having kind of built up towards this, we get to perhaps one of these deeper points or more foundational points to discuss between us today. So I thought we'd have a quick chat about what psychological safety is or isn't, why we should care. It's linked to high performance and high performance teams. Why, as leader, we should invest in it or be considering it. I'll show you the lead model. It's not mine, but it's quite an interesting model, I think, to take away, one that one could start to use at work. I'll show you a case study, and then we also might like to consider drawing the conversation about who decides if there's psychological safety. So if that's all right with you, psychological safety then, let's just have your view of it, because it's a big term. It seems to be getting bandied around a lot at the moment, but is it something you talk about at work? Is it something you care about at work? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, please.
I think we talk about it. We don't necessarily call it psychological safety. It's are you comfortable? And you pop that up nicely. Are you comfortable reporting? Are you comfortable telling the boss that they've made a mistake? Yeah.
I think probably 20 years ago, I used to talk about it in terms of high performance teams. One of the measures that we had was to what degree do you feel able to say what you think and feel? We didn't call it psychological safety.
But
we just
no,
asked
what did
that
you
question.
call it though? What did you call it back then?
We didn't 20 years ago. We just asked that question. It was one of the elements of high performing teams. We knew it existed, but it didn't really have this sort of term then, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I'm interested to hear Matt or Dickie or anybody else chipping in, but we didn't really call it that.
Totally. I mean, I'm sure you're going to reference it, but Edmondson really talked about psychological safety, and that's where that sort of came from. So I think it's something that's become part of our nomenclature now, with somebody giving it a label. But before that, I think, and we still do it today, we talk about collaboration. And in that pursuit of collaboration, really what you're talking about is trying to tease out convergent or different thinking to improve a better output. And invariably what happens is, and I've seen this in lots of different situations, which is ideas are put forward that are bashed down, and therefore inhibiting any future idea sharing. And then this kind of thing comes up to say, no, we're really open to feedback, and we're really collaborative, and it's like,
actually, just not that feedback. We like feedback, just not that feedback.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been sat in meetings where it's like, oh, there's no bad ideas, and you put a bad idea up, and it's like, no, that is a really bad idea, and that's the last time you ever do it. And you kind of think, psychological safety is
and you won't do it again. That's I think this is the point of this half-hour chat, right? You won't do it again because you've been smacked down, and it's a bad thing.
Yeah, PJ, you were sharing the other day about the experiment with the monkeys getting the banana. I don't know if that's come up, but that really resonated with me. That we as leaders, we kind of go through this. Oh my God, we need high performance. How do we get to high performance? Oh, we need collaboration, psychological safety, and actually, and I noticed this on the LinkedIn feedback, which I think it really stuck in my mind. I mean, bursting to say something about it, but in a non-confrontational way, which is my nature. Which is, it was something along the lines of, we run commercial organizations, we don't run care centers. And I just fundamentally don't agree with that. I think actually invariably we look after people, and that means a great degree of care. And if you don't have that and you just jump to, oh, we need high performance and therefore we need psychological safety, you kind of missed out the essential element, which is we deal with people. Anyway,
really interesting. No, it's a really interesting point that, you know, that balance, you know, between perhaps care and commercial, you know, which comes first and how do you develop? Because commercial certainly comes out of care. If I care for you, if we create a great environment, if people feel, if people are able to be at the top of their game, to flourish, to be at their best, then that makes sense to me commercially. But really interesting conversation. I think Jennifer's joined. Hi, Jennifer, how are you? If you want to pop in at any point, Jennifer, let us know. So, yeah, in fact, and you mentioned Edmondson, so there'll be some quotes, but Matt, so a climate where people are comfortable expressing and being themselves. And what's quite often interesting is I work for a customer and I say, why have you, I remember this going back from Xenius years ago, talking to one of the directors, and she said, no matter how good we are as directors, and we are good, you will always get more from people because you're in that safer space. You're more likely to have that element of trust, to speak to them confidentially. They'll share things with you. You straight away come in with a higher level of trust than we do. So you'll always kind of get more. And to some degree, that's true. I see that as perhaps as a luxury, you know, something to be taken great care of. It's important, and I'm very proud of that. But I'm also very kind of careful of that.
Do you see that as because you're a third party and not an employee?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, people, when we'll talk about it a little bit at the end, but people, when we do interviews, confidential interviews, anonymous interviews to gather information to help the business, people will come up with ideas they'd never share in a group. And they'll tell you that. They never, ever would share that in a group. They'll ask questions, they'll come up with ideas, they'll come up with solutions to problems that they will tell you they'd never share in a group. And often also, they believe they're the only one that has it. And they would look foolish if they shared it. And yet, I think I may have said last week, in 12 people we interviewed, 5 said the same thing. The same, 5 of them in the same team or same group think, but wouldn't dare say it. Jennifer, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. Sorry, I was moving around the house when you asked me
No
that, and I
worries.
couldn't, so I
No
couldn't
worries.
answer.
Do you
Yeah,
just
no, I'm
want
good,
to
thanks.
do you just want to quickly say hello and who you work for? And can I just remind you, because you joined late, or just let you know, we record these calls, so
Yeah, I saw that.
just to share. Great.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Jen. And I'm the director of people for the UK, North and Ireland for DP World.
And you've got a bit of a change on it. I don't know if you're allowed to share, but you've got a bit of a project on at the moment, haven't you?
So yeah, I mean we're still going through a massive just transformation journey with legacy businesses that were brought in, and trying to align the different cultures and to get to this one DP World vision, and everyone aligned. So yeah, that's still a big ongoing thing for us.
Hey,
Thank you,
can
thank
you
you.
align the cultures? Can that be done?
I think
it's just a tough question, right?
yeah, I mean that's the
Maybe for another day. I personally
I mean,
think
the idea
sometimes
is
you
everything,
can't.
the DP
But
World principles that we've rolled out, and getting people bought into the, the behaviors, and, attached to those principles, and get everyone aligned with those is, I think, the first step. But yeah, I think it's a challenge, for sure, because the businesses are very different. People's ways of working are different, but yeah, I think that's,
sorry,
yeah.
that was a horrible question.
No, but
I
that's
apologize for
no,
asking such a
it's a
thing.
good question. And yeah, I think you can change the culture of a business, but you need to obviously have the people, um, all on board with doing that. And that being, role modeled at a senior level. So
Sorry, we completely derailed PJ.
digressed.
No, not at all, not at all, MJ, not
Great
at all.
question.
And it's a great question, and it's one that gets answered. Perhaps to what degree can you, or what elements do you want to, which are the ones that matter, and therefore I think align those. But culturally, we're going to be different, as we talked about last week, nationally and internationally, north and south, east and west, and so on, as well as different types of business. I think it's always interesting when you get like one of the older businesses, perhaps one of the banks. You look through pre-COVID or during COVID, this big thing about digitization. We had banks buying startups to try and get their knowledge, their skills, and so on, and then basically ruining the business because they couldn't integrate it. And often that was kind of a cultural thing. But that certainly is for another day. But it's something that I feel quite strongly about. So, Jen, you're very welcome. So just a bit, and to Matt's point, I have stolen, as he pointed out, quotes from Edmondson and everything. Look, at least I've had the decency to name them this week, Matt.
Yeah.
But it's not mine. It's out there. Look, we're just saying, psychological safety makes great business sense, and it is important for high-performing teamwork. I'm sure. I don't know much about football, or might have a view about taking penalties. In European Cups or World Cups, maybe there's something around that. How likely are you to take the penalty on behalf of your team, and how do you worry about
think
missing
the more
it?
you practice, the better you get.
You'd hope, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But an interesting one. Vindu, how are you? You're very welcome today. The lead model, just is a quick one. If anybody's interested in thinking, if there's some like a takeaway, here's what I wanted to show you. It's just a quick takeaway when it comes to psychological safety. And Jen, you might kind of have a view of this one, but really simple. Lead by example. Well, okay, there's a few points. We talked about feedback the other week, asking for feedback, acknowledging mistakes, for example, considering other people's opinions, being approachable. We know this, but it is a bit of a checklist. Are we really doing it? Do we, for example, that notion of, do we really have an open door policy? Do you really? Because you can say you have, and as an individual, and the rest of the business says there isn't one. You can say you have psychological safety, or that you're trusted, or that you're trustworthy, and yet everybody or other people may say you are not. So it just it's a bit of a checklist to help. Environment that is safe. I think this is an interesting one. To Matt's point, don't slap down good ideas or different ideas, or even silly ideas, because you want those silly ideas to build and connect people in ideas to come up with the stuff that will work. So you kind of want the stuff that won't, or the silly ones. And if you slap down a silly idea early, you may completely kill the creativity in the room, or people's likelihood to come up with any idea at all, which is a shame, because sometimes you get people saying, no, I learned 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago not to say anything. And you think you haven't shared anything for all those years, yeah? Well, I got told off, or I got slapped down 5, 6, 7 years ago. Why would I risk that again? So encourage out the box thinking, but really make a safe space to do it. Rather than asking for a few ideas, ask for 250, which is what sometimes I do with the customers, which makes them come up with lots of silly ideas, because often it leads to the good stuff. But create an environment to do that.
How do you then manage the process when somebody has come up with an idea, but the team has not agreed with it? How do you then lower that person back down to feeling?
Yeah, I think if you look at coming up with ideas for something, if it's problem solving, if you're doing it together and building on it, then it's not one person's response. I always talk about it being the group's response. So in this group has come up with, or this individual is offering this idea to the group to build on. But I think I've ever seen an idea come out of a meeting that was the beginning, middle, and end to it. It will always flourish and develop, and it might trigger some other thinking. So that's not the one that goes forward. But I think it can often be an important part, even if it gets taken off the table. It started the thinking. So Dickie, that's kind of how I manage it. It's about the process and about the iterations of that, and therefore the group own it, not the individual. So it's not a kind of a right or wrong thing. It's a developmental thing, which one encourages the group to kind of go through, if that's okay. There's some other stuff there on active listening, the A. Or again, although we know it, I'm not a big fan of the notion of active listening. It winds me up a little bit when people tell me they're active listeners, but there's still some keys in there. And there's your bit, Dickie, build on ideas actively, connecting others and contributions on the topic. Develop. No one idea is going to. I don't know how many. I don't know if everybody knows how many iterations of the Volkswagen Golf is there now. There's a Mark 1 Golf, Mark 2. I don't know what we're up to now. Is it 10, 12, 15? I don't know.
Something like that, BJ.
Yeah, so iterations. And then finally, it's the mindset here. And I think this one is, really useful just to consider is thinking about feedback, as we've said before, as valuable rather than critical. and running through that feedback process. So whilst we need psychological safety in order to be giving and receiving feedback, bit of a conundrum, giving and receiving feedback well helps develop the trust that we're talking about in order to build that safety. It's not, no one's saying it's particularly easy, but small steps, repeat, develop, and so on. Yeah, I think it could be. Anybody sort of seen this model before or got a view of it? Be really interested if anybody's used it, seen it.
Yeah, no, I've seen this, and PJ, we've talked about active listening versus empathic listening, and you know, when we were together, and I think like that, you know, and how empathic listening is so much more impactful as opposed to just, you know, active listening and mirroring someone, or but actually people, and I did go back and I listened to the book again. Yeah, seek first to understand before you're understood. That is where that came from.
Which book is that? Sorry,
it was the
Jen?
7 Habits of Highly
Okay.
Effective People.
Totally.
So yeah, I did go back and listen to that, but yeah,
I'm super
it's
lazy though. Presumably that's like the first habit. Don't be lazy.
not well, be proactive, I think is might be the first one, but I think that was number 4. But yeah, it is really interesting, just like how, you know, the impact of people feeling that you do actually understand where they're coming from. And I think in the context of psychological safety, I think that, yeah, I think if you look at it in that context, as opposed to maybe active listening, I think that it is definitely crucial, that people feel they're understood. People care to take the time to understand where they're coming from. And
the time, you know, if we had more time on this one, time too is so important, isn't it? I mean, I was speaking to a guy the other day, a commercial director, so a senior chap. We were talking. I said, you know, he was just talking at me on the phone. I said, crikey, it's like you're going at 100 miles an hour. When do you stop and, you know, get creative? And he went, oh no, we haven't got, you know. So when you take your time out, and he said, oh, we haven't got time for jollies. So they considered taking time out to think and get creative as a jolly. He's putting it in the same, you know, kind of mindset. But in fact, we know that taking time out to reset, to rethink, to get creative, to share, to ask questions, so important. And yet you can hear him talking. It's like when you stand on a station. Talking to him was like standing on a station when a mainline fast trains goes whizzing past the station. The speed, I mean, it was kind of overwhelming, and you think, when do you slow down? So taking the time to create this, taking the time to practice, Jen, absolutely. A model that we shared probably some weeks back, may have mentioned it once or twice, I do like this. The leadership spectrum, and I thought I'd just bring it up again, because this is about us as leaders, and the notion of the leadership lab is how can we create better leaders in order to do the various things the business needs us to do and better care for and develop people within the business. So the leadership spectrum, if we think about the top, the spectrum of order, prescribe, inform, coach, and just as a quick reminder or refresher for those if you haven't seen it, is, you know, we can order people what to do. If the building's on fire, there might be time to order you out the building. I can prescribe how you'll do it, hand in hand, 2x2 crocodile. I can inform you where we're going to meet out in the car park by the fire safety point. Yeah, it's not a time to coach when the building's on fire. We can do that afterwards. Can we improve? Can we develop? So there is time to tell people what to do. There also might be times legally and responsibly when we have to do that. But many other times we can inform people of information. That might be the feedback piece. I can inform you about things we need to do, about tasks, roles, opportunities. I can coach, I can offer some feedback. And then we can choose to turn left and I can simply tell you the answer, or I can choose to turn right and start coaching, asking questions, developing the trust, taking the time that you were talking about, empathic listening, developing relationships and so on, and then starting to move to kind of influence. And in that space, we need that safety. We need that trust, and we're going to develop it by doing that. If every time as leaders we just inform and then we tell people what to do, we order them what to do, we prescribe how they're going to do it, there's not going to be any developmental space or opportunities for individuals. So I think the psychological safety piece fits, if not directly, but indirectly to many of these models. And as I say, just turning right into inform and coach rather than turning left to prescribe and order gives us an opportunity just to stop and think and develop this stuff naturally. Is that all right? I've slightly bastardized somebody else's model, but it just gives us a sense about how we can get these things to work and how we can be aware of these on a more regular basis. Now, when we work with customers with our 5-step process called Exact, if you look at them, many of these points require a high level of psychological safety, which is why we facilitate them. As I said earlier, it's often easier for us to sit outside the business and ask the questions. So if you look at the bottom one, what's the vision for this company? What's the future? What's the potential? What could we be doing? What's the marketplace going to be like? If we're not able to ask those questions and or answer them, we're not going to get that rich view of the future. So again, much easier for us to do it externally than it is internally. If you haven't been practicing this or developing this, and people might give you some ideas, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, but they're not going to give you perhaps the bonkers ideas or the really fresh new ideas that are going to give you a clearer or richer picture of what the future could be doing, not just for the business, but for your marketplace. Likewise, this piece about where are we starting from, step 2, extract, what's the information? People have to feel safe to give that. So again, it's often easier to do that. We get answers that people won't give in a group. But particularly when it comes to the third one, because we've gathered information safely and securely, when we look at the hurdles that might slow or derail any challenge, and understand where the current attention is in the business, but where we need to refocus attention. Much easier to then, I've mentioned earlier, 5 people thinking the same thing out of a team of 12. We go to other businesses, we interview 15, 20, 25 people. You've got that collective, which is what Matt sort of mentioned earlier, that collective brilliance perhaps, or that collective insight. When you think about that, if we can gather those ideas together, we get a much deeper and clearer picture of things. And we gather that information in step 3. And then because it's good quality information, and if we deliver it well, we can really help people refocus, because we've got to tell management some things perhaps they're not aware of, or they don't particularly want to hear. And we have to do that in a trusting and safe way too. And in this, just interestingly, when you look at where attention is or where it needs to be, there's what might slow or derail this project. When you look at the specific ones, you might find that people in the business, they won't particularly say necessarily psychological safety, but they'll be talking about things like it. We're unlikely to give and receive feedback. We're unlikely to challenge. We don't really trust management. We don't really, you'll get, it's that sort of expression. There's nothing wrong, but something's not quite right. And you've got to kind of play in that space to understand what it really means. Because if there isn't that safety, probably this goes back to what Mark was saying 20 years ago, we didn't necessarily call it psychological safety, but we knew something wasn't right. And now we have some names and we have some labels on it. But of course, from there, then we can develop how we're going to work together. We can train and coach each other on how we're going to do these things, and eventually invest in the projects necessary. But having done this with the client, and I think I showed some of you this slide last week, psychological safety, to a degree, can be measured. We can ask questions, we can survey, interviews, focus groups. And I think I said to you this one, just looking at this particular client, we are allowed to use it. We scored it 1 to 6, so 6 being high, 1 being low. So when you've got 3.5 would be average. So when you've got scores in the 2, it's pretty low. But if you just look at some of the subtle things that people mention, inconsistent feedback, reluctance, fear of abuse or repercussions, or whilst it might be bottom one, right in the middle, analysis says low level intimidation of individuals who break rank. Now that exists in the business, but management don't know that. So we're just saying, look, it's unlikely within psychological safety is being affected by these things. It's low because of these things. So you could put people on, for example, giving and receiving feedback training, but that's unlikely to happen at work. It'd be a great fun day, but it's unlikely to happen at work because we don't have that safety. But at least if you have the conversation around it, hey, it's unlikely to work because of this, and you have the open conversation, that in itself can be a huge start to developing psychological safety. There's other points up on there, but it's funny how some of the, or smart funny, but I find it really interesting how it's very personal and very, very, not just personal and individual. It's almost sort of quite simple. I just don't fancy doing it. I just don't feel safe. There's just not enough trust. And as individuals, we know it because we're very emotional people. So in theory, of course, it should make sense just to charge forward and do this project. But emotionally, we get these funny faces being pulled. Look at the top, can be nasty at times. Look, it's just not worth it, to be honest. And if you've got somebody saying, you like to give them feedback, like to give them receive feedback, oh, it's just not worth it. And so you can't get into that really rich stuff. Just talking, does any of this resonate with anybody? Do you agree, disagree? Have you heard it before? Do you think it's outrageous? How would you feel if this was perhaps some feedback from your company? What do you think?
I think the safety piece is the big thing, because I worked in a security business, and it was very toxic. And the people at the top, if you didn't agree with them, that was it. You know, well, what do they know about it? And they bullied people into saying nothing. And
that's actually genius, isn't it? All that
was,
knowledge, creativity, skill now just gets put on hold, doesn't it? It
yeah.
exists, but you can't access it. I love that idea about what do you know anyway. That's a great quote.
Yeah, you know, I've been doing, and it really, I mean, I brought in loads of people. I tried lots of times, but the culture had gone across the top board level, so it was like a snake pit. Even at board level, you know, they weren't looking to help each other; they're looking to put each other down, and it was an absolute nightmare.
How successful are they, Dickie?
Sorry?
How successful is that organisation?
It plods along, I would say. It's in fairness, the individuals are quite good, but they don't pull together as a team. If they pull together as a team, that would be flipping brilliant. But it just about survives. Let's say, yeah, it does. It just about survives. And when I went in there, the potential of it was huge. But I just trying to change these people's mindsets, and of course, then you bring in somebody where I was saying, you know, you don't know what you don't know. Let's bring in somebody who's, you know, interview them and that. But as soon as you brought somebody in to do that, all they did was pick on them. They didn't want to listen to them. They just wanted to find fault. And it was an adventurous 2 years of my life.
This is a sad tale, Dickie. A sad tale.
Sorry?
A sad tale. Is there a happy ending?
It was. I mean, the business is still going, and it's getting better because I brought 2 or 3 people in that managed to survive, and it's now starting to permeate through. But, you know, when I had to sit there and say to some of the directors, well, I think you're good at doing the job, but you're not a director. You know, it didn't go down very well, but it was, you know, it had to be
no one likes to be told they're not doing a good job, right?
Yeah. But they were really good at doing the job. They just were hopeless. Their egos wouldn't let people grow.
But I think it's a point we see quite regularly in business, sadly, that, you know, what people did some years ago was good. You know, when they were doing what they were doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, that was great, that was useful, that was timely. But it's not useful now, or it's not as useful now. The business requires different behaviors from leaders now than it did 10 years ago. And some of those people have changed and morphed, and kind of some haven't. Vindu, I just wanted to ask you a quick one. Dickie, who just has some fabulous points. I think it was Dickie, you said snake pit. Do you say? And I just wondered, Vindu, if the notion of having a culture that's like a snake pit, I just wondered if you'd like to just say something on that, just not just as my great friend, but as an expert in this space.
So before I answer, PJ, my question is,
no pressure there, Vindu. No pressure.
Sorry?
Mark was probably teasing me by putting pressure on you.
No pressure, Vindu.
No pressure, yeah.
Solve all our problems, please.
What do you mean by snake pit? Because there's many interpretations. So I would like to understand, what's your definition of snake pit?
As soon as somebody came up with an opinion, all the others turned and attacked it.
Okay.
And it wasn't just one person they attacked. Then if somebody else had an opinion, well, they'd attack back, and they were all.
Okay.
It was like a free-for-all.
Okay. So, Paul, your question is, what's my perspective on that? Or have I seen it? Have I experienced it? What would you like to know?
I'd love your view on snake pit. I'm smiling away here because I'm desperate to get stuck in, but I think it'd be useful if they heard from someone else.
It's actually snake pit. It's when someone reacts the way Dickie has just explained, there's always a question of how do you say, of lack of confidence. So when someone's giving an opinion and they're sort of attacking, and that person is being attacked by the group, there's definitely a lack of trust within the group. But there's also a question of confidence. Are they confident? And are they feeling safe? To your question, I'm saying, yeah, well, you know what? We don't really agree. So instead of saying we don't agree, they go into attack mode, into the defense mode. Unfortunately, that's something that you see more often than you would like to. And you observe that in a very subtle way also when you're doing brainstorming sessions. I mean, when you think of brainstorming sessions, people, normally it should be open, free for all, everybody should be contributing and all. Have you not experienced moments where people are sort of challenging the ideas when it's not the moment to challenge it, but because they're feeling sort of challenged and they are saying, oh, this idea is damn good, why didn't I say it? And then they want to sort of put themselves out there. So the expression of snake pit is something that you do see, but no, I would not recommend to react to it, because the question is, what's behind that? Why are people reacting that way? And what's hiding behind that? It's a defense mechanism.
It definitely was in this one, a lack of confidence. That they felt threatened by anybody who came in who might, you know, I've always gone on the idea that I try and find people who are better than me. But they all know they'd kill them.
And unfortunately, there's not a, how to say, your approach, the key is very correct, of saying always have people who are better than you, because it's a diversity that makes the richness and makes the success. Unfortunately, you don't see it as often as you would like.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Paul, if I
Indeed.
answered your question.
No, great. Dickie, great question. Thanks for raising it. Matt, did you have just anything to add in on that?
You know me. Yeah, do you know, I was thinking, I listened into a speech from a guy called Scott Graham, who is a producer for Frantic Assembly, and he deals in a collaborative space with lots of creative people. And you can imagine when you get lots of creative people together, curiosity, that's the key word, is in spades. And to bring that all together, and people work at different speeds, is essential for the collaborative activity to take place. And the one thing I've shared, which really resonated with me, is he was trying to distill what makes a great creative environment. And he's distilled it down, and he's challenging himself in this, because he says he may be making this too simple, but he shared it, and anyway, it resonated. So I'll share it with you. And he said, collaboration is the art of not saying no.
Oh, so we need to debate that next week in the collaboration session, the collaborative session, don't we?
So the piece I would offer is, that is his, Scott Graham's the guy's name. Unbelievable theatre producer. He's not professionally trained, but he's absolutely been there, done that, and has really challenged the sector. But it's all transferable, right? So I think if we as leaders started to think about, you know, we talk about high performance, and curiosity and candor are key elements that I think that are the ingredients for psychological safety. Incidentally, I don't think you can ever achieve psychological safety. I think you pursue psychological safety, but one stupid comment or one error could completely unravel months or years of activity. So I don't think we should label it as, yes, we've achieved psychological safety. I think it's a pursuit. And the ingredients for that, I've listed those as we've been talking here, as curiosity, open to feedback, inclusivity, and vulnerability, and candor. I'll stop at that point.
No, because I'd really like just to pick on that, you know, that it's a moving feast. It's, you know, you can be in it one moment, and you say, you know, moments later, the amount if you like, of psychological safety, or the however you're qualifying it, 0 to 10 or whatever, can change significantly. And sometimes it's just worth doing. I think it's interesting, just as a little sort of activity just to share, which if you're in the right space with people, is just get them to write on a sticky note. Think about some teams they've been in before, their level, what they consider psychological safety, 1 to 10, 1 being low, 10 being high. Maybe
Edmondson said this thing. She said something like, it's a shared belief that it's a felt permission for candor.
Yep.
And that's the key word there for me, is it's a felt permission. So you're right into the abstract of how have I asked the question, or where's the leadership, or what's the energy in the room, or does it feel like candor can take place in that space? And if so, you've possibly got more chance of creating the right conditions for people to say, actually, I've got a different view. I've got real concerns about where we're going.
And on the beginning, we said who decides, who says if there's psychological safety or not. And that bit about the felt permission is really important, because I'll decide if I feel it, but then it's the group thing that, the outcome is, does this group feel, does the team I'm in, the space I'm in, for me, do I feel it? And often we don't necessarily make sense of it. I'm trying to say, I mean, emotionally, it just doesn't feel right, or it just, whatever it is, this is just the way I feel, and therefore that's my response to it. I may not be able to articulate it particularly well, but it's just the way I feel. And somebody else can say, no, there's great safety in this room, or I'm the director, I'm telling you there's great safety. Well, I don't feel it, because we're emotional beings, as you said. I think that's a great point, Matt. Thank you so much. Thank you. Anybody else on that before we sort of gently move to a close? Can we pick up, Matt? Can you just remind us, if you get a chance to come next week? I'd really like to just pick up on that piece next week. I think it'd be very useful if we could, around collaboration. Thank you. Oh, I have my slides stuck. Anybody know why my slides have stuck?
How do we collectively promote this? I think this is fascinating and extremely valuable. And how do we collectively promote you, PJ, to get more bums on seats, as it were?
MJ, thank you, because we talked about it the other week. I mean, it's in some ways, it's sad there's only 5, 6, 7 people, maybe 10 people come.
Don't get me wrong, I like that there's only 5 people, but for you, I feel you should have like 100 people.
I mean, I'd love it, and we always get great conversation, because we get 7 or 8 really, really interested people, very, very bright, very capable, very, challenging people. But
and me, yeah.
Oh, are you still doing your stand-up comedy? But the answer is, I don't know. We're trying. MJ, any ideas gratefully received, because I'd love to share more of this in service of building better British business, and of helping people be more successful, because it makes great business, makes great good sense, makes great sense for businesses, communities, shareholders. Just to say, and certainly the government needs it at the moment. Whichever government's in wants higher performance and productivity, because it wants more tax. So ultimately it does make sense, but the commercial and the care bit, back to the point earlier. So any feedback gratefully received.
Have you come across Enterprise Nation?
I haven't.
And the Association of Business Mentors?
I haven't. Do you?
The Enterprise Nation is government backed for small businesses. They pay £3,000 towards them going on courses. And I only discovered it by accident, and I did the course and that, which allowed me to become a member of the Association of Business Mentors. But something like this would be right up their street.
Maybe after we have a quick chat, you could, if you want to email me, or I'll connect with you if you send me that information. I'd really appreciate it. Jennifer, are you able to speak at the moment? I know you've just popped into your car, but are you able to speak at the moment? Just a quick one.
Yep. You should be able to hear me.
I'd be very interested just with what Matt was saying earlier about the collaboration piece and the candor. I just want to, bearing in mind, and for those that don't know, DP World's going through it's a fabulous change at the moment, huge growth. They've got massive ambition. I just wondered, Jen, if you were able to say something, if you just had a view on that, actually, about the candor and the collaboration piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crucial. And having there's a book called Radical Candor actually that DP World uses in its
Kim
by
Scott.
Kim Scott, yeah. And which I've read is brilliant, but it does, I think, link well to a psychologically safe environment where you can be very candid in your feedback and what you're saying and stuff. So I think it's crucial. Yeah, I mean, with DP World and collaboration, I mean, that's one of our principles, collaborate to win. But I mean, you said about the growth that we're doing. Our ambition is to double our revenue by 2028, which is massive amount of growth, and that will require, that radical candor and collaboration. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, no, Jen, it's just fascinating because I know you've got that. I just wanted to give you the opportunity, please, just to sort of share that with the group about the collaboration and winning peace, one of the key
yeah, I
values or
mean, it is something.
principles.
And it is one, like I said, one of our 5 principles. And we do a lot of work around, what those effective and ineffective, behaviors look like around that. And we pull that into our performance management. And so, I mean, collaboration is incredibly crucial, I suppose, as well, like with, like we said about these legacy businesses we've acquired and the new, mergers and acquisitions that we're looking at. For that to be successful, collaboration is, like I said, essential to that.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen. Listen, for today, there's our sort of 45 minutes. I think we're more or less done. I'd like to get you away reasonably on time. Kenny, thank you so much for joining us on the Leadership Lunchtime Lab. Really enjoy it. I get a ton out of it. I don't know if I'm supposed to, but I absolutely, I think I learned as much from you guys. Thanking your stories. The insights are fabulous. And that's kind of what I want to do. I want to create a collective space where we can learn from and with each other. Not just about me, but about all of us, because there's so many fabulous insights from us. And if we can connect that and learn from each other, then I'd encourage you to connect and share and to keep up this sort of developmental piece. Next Wednesday, we get together for the final one of this tranche on collaboration. I may lead that, or I may step back and let Matt lead that. I don't know. We could put him on the spot for a bit of fun. Can I thank you so much? Any closing words before I say goodbye and let everybody go? Any closing words?
Great session as always, PJ. Thanks everyone.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Hope to see you next week. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.
No worries. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Right.
Bye.